Hello, hello, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diana Mayfield, and I'm the head of content here at Design Files. Today, we are joined by Emily Yeates of Urban Revival. Emily is back by popular demand. Last time, she shared her spec book strategy with us, and today she's going to teach us how to put a stop to never-ending projects. Welcome, Emily. How's it going?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for coming back. It's great to see you. We really enjoyed your last presentation, and just in case some people haven't seen that one, I'm just popping that into our comments if anybody wants to save that so that they can watch that after this, because that was a great presentation on your spec book strategy and how you get rid of the hassle of dealing with contractors. But today we're talking about a completely different kind of stress, right? So before we dive into it, maybe you can just say a little bit about what made you want to talk about never-ending projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was probably back in 2020. I had a few clients that year, and I just felt like the design jobs were like Russian roulette. Like it was just like throw stuff at the wall and pray something sticks. And the project just kept going on and on and on and on because they like loved the design process. And I was like really determined to figure out a way to make it more so that I felt like I was controlling the process and that I was the designer in charge. And so I started trying different tactics and implementing things, and this is just what worked the best. So
Yeah, love it.
our timeline idea that I'm going to share today.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense that this would come up during COVID because I know that was a crazy time for design. So crazy time. So on that note, I am going to add your slides to the stage. I'm going to disappear and I'll be back for Q&A. So everybody, while you're watching, please feel free to drop in questions as you think of them, and then we'll get to them at the end.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'll get going. So just a little bit about me. I've been doing design for I think it might even be 18 years now. And I started out dropping out of college and just hitting the ground running. So I have been testing different things to see what works best. And all along the way, I'm pretty sure I've tried all of the wrong things. And I have never had or I didn't have a mentor as I was developing my business. And so I was determined when I had figured things out to be a mentor to other people when I felt like I had something really valuable to share. So I really love teaching and helping people accelerate their success and just skip the learning curve. So what I have found in my business is that efficiency really equals profits. So the more efficient you are, the more money you can make, the less time you spend just spinning in circles. So a lot of our clients, as we know, find ways to just drag their projects like on and on and on. And I think we've all investigated, how do I stop this? Do I just send them flowers with a thank you card and say, I loved working with you? Please stop texting me. Please stop contacting me. We've tried all those little things and none of them really work. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we have implemented a timeline and how that just streamlines your workflow. And it also has helped, set a lot of boundaries with clients. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that, but it's helped stop scope creep, all kinds of things. And so just my firm, we do full home furnishings. We do new builds, we do remodels. And what's kind of interesting is over the years, as I've collected data, we pretty much average 21 projects a year. That is a lot. And I have found it very interesting that even when I was, younger in my career, that number has stayed the same, but the projects have been able to grow in size. and still do the same amount of projects because we've become a lot more efficient. So timelines, are going to be your new BFF. And I'm going to show you how to structure a timeline in DesignFiles, and that this sets your client's expectations really early on in the process. And when I first started investigating this concept with my operations manager, she came from a background of systems processes. She consulted for lots of companies on how to become more efficient and get more throughput, all of those corporate terms that us as creatives aren't always familiar with. You know, we get the idea, we want to be very efficient, we just are so busy, we don't sit down and figure out how to do it. So she came up with this concept, trying to make this a little bit bigger, was why don't we give each client a timeline of the project and then stick to it. And I at first was like, I don't think that that is even humanly possible. There are just so many things that go into a design project and so many unexpected things. I just don't think it's going to work. And she's like, well, let's try it. And so and then we have kind of refined it over time, and this has just worked phenomenally. So what we did is in DesignFiles, if you open up a board, you can create templates. And if you haven't played with templates yet, I recommend you watch one of their how-to videos on templates, because we talked a lot about it in our last webinar when it comes to spec books. So we're a big fan of the templates in DesignFiles. And this one is called our timeline template. And what we did was we just played around with the text and some imagery and created kind of a format that we can copy to every project and then edit a little bit. And so every client, as you know, calls, and they have an end goal in mind, right? And sometimes that goal is, I want to move in by the summer, I want this project done in 2 months, you know, however unrealistic their timeline is, or realistic, they typically have like an end date in mind of when they'd like to wrap things up. So what we do is we start with our first date, which is, you know, going to be our first meeting together once we've started the design. And then our last date is usually the install or the pre-construction walkthrough, just depending on your services. You're going to start out with like kind of the first big milestone, and at the end with whatever that last milestone is. And then just add in a few other milestones along the way. So our projects typically have 6 different bullet points in the timeline. Some of our larger projects have maybe 8, but I'm going to just briefly go over this one so you can understand typically what they're like. So what we do is we do our first initial presentation, and that is where we present maybe 20% of the project to the client. And this is just a gut check. So they've provided inspiration, they've provided, you know, whatever it is for you to get started on the project. And I create a mood board for every single room with the finishes, fixtures, furniture, but just like a high level concept. And then maybe a rendering or 2, but really just 20% of the project, enough to show your client that you're capable, this is the direction you want to go in. And I really do think it's important to at least have one rendering in there. I have found through the years that if I just present concepts, they have far too many questions to be comfortable to move to the next phase. So showing them that you have a mood board, your concepts, and then how it turns into that rendering has been able to put a lot of clients at ease. So that's just my little side note to that. And this meeting should always be in person, because you are going to require that they give you their full feedback, and you can decide how many days that is. So you'll see here I wrote initial presentation with Earl and Emily, feedback due in 14 days. So the reason I kind of pulled, I know how many days to add in here is that I know kind of my team's schedule, how much we have on our plate, and I know our end goal was to place orders by 4:15. So I kind of work backwards knowing how long each phase takes me, and that's how many days of feedback I provide them. And this also has a lot of implications, good ones, on how it's going to affect the project going on, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's our first milestone, is this initial gut check meeting. Next milestone is our full presentation, and we give our clients 2 rounds of revision. So depending on what you offer, you can adjust this. But we provide the client with the day and the time. They know this is our full presentation. They're going to see every mood board, every concept, every single rendering, all the finished samples. And once we present that and send that to them through Design Files, they have 7 days to give me feedback. And that can change. Obviously, the number of days doesn't really matter to me. It's just what I know. I need feedback by this time for me to meet the next date. And then once we get their feedback, I show them I'm going to deliver the edits to them by this date. And I also write in there that I'm going to deliver to them digitally. So whatever your process is, you decide that and you put it into this timeline. So he knew by 1/23 he was going to get his edits delivered digitally. And if he was the type of client that really liked samples, I would also send those to him. This meeting can be in person as well, just this client lived out of town. So I made sure he knew it's going to come to you digitally, you'll get your samples, and I need feedback within 7 days for me to be able to then deliver your quotes, make the edits, you know, whatever it is. And then my next date is going to be when I place orders, and then the last date will be our installation. At this point in time, when I created this timeline, we didn't know when that would be. But if I knew he was moving in the summer, you know, the installation, I would have had a guesstimate for the dates on there. So this timeline is very fluid. It can be as fluid as you want it to be, because let's say your client didn't deliver feedback for 14 days, but you gave them 7. They see in their mind, you update this and send it back out. They see that because it took them 14 days, all these dates are going to move out at least a week, right? Depending on your availability. So this is a concept. Sometimes if they are doing a giant, very expensive kitchen, I might have here, you know, appliances selections due by this date, and I might set them up with, you know, my Sub-Zero showroom to do a cooking demo. But whatever is included in your project, you're going to make sure there's a milestone for it. And so, so that you stay on track and that your client stays on track. So as you see, this is like a very simplistic timeline, but there are amazing impacts because of it. So like I already said, your client now sees the dates they get with you. They now know that they need to deliver feedback by a certain day, and that feedback needs to be very well thought out. So what used to happen to me was, you know, a client would sit down at their computer, they'd go into Design Files, and they'd start sending me their feedback, right? Like approve, decline, comment on each item. And then I'd start making their edits. And then they'd come in for their next presentation, and the husband would be there. And then he'd be like, oh, I don't really actually like that. And so it was just this like really frustrating position to be in, where one person in the partnership was, you know, on top of things, but not including their other partner. And I wouldn't find that information out till further down the line. So the timeline really did hit home that I value my time, and I'm only giving you so much time. And so you need to value it as well. And they have really valued every single meeting, made sure all parties are there, have been very thorough in their feedback, because I let them know I'm not going to move on to the next round until you have completely finished your feedback and communicated to me that you're all done. So sticking to those timeline mile markers has changed how our clients value our time. So this has allowed us to be much more efficient. And when you're efficient, your revenue goes up. And that's been just one of the biggest game changers in our business. So I just want to show you this here. I think it's really important for us designers and people in business to be open with each other about how much business are we actually doing, you know, how did we get there, what is even possible for the next designer. And so this is in 2020 COVID, right, when things started to really kick off. And I was doing about $440,000 in sales. So that included furniture, included service fees. And then I hired this systems and processes operation manager to help me dial in all of my pain points, because I was just going nuts with these projects that would never end. And we started implementing things like the timeline, and many other things. And you can see our revenue has just grown exponentially since we started velvet roping our time and expecting our clients to also value our time. So this is how we've grown through the years, still doing the same number of projects every single year. They're just getting larger and larger, and we're able to do that because we've become extremely efficient. So the timeline this concept I shared with you today is a very, very small part of my business edit program. And I wanted to share a little bit more about it because the last time I did this webinar, I had a ton of Zoom calls after with women talking about their businesses and the pain points that they're facing. And I was able to share with them part of my other business, which I don't just do interior design. I do what's called the Business Edit by Urban Revival. And I take groups of designers to the furniture market, and I teach them how to maximize their clientele, their existing clientele, how to do their proposals, and how to communicate in those initial calls with clients, and how to resist giving people discounts, how to implement project timelines, how to have a proper contract so that you're not biting yourself in the butt or shooting yourself in the foot. We talk about how to master client conversations and develop really, really solid internal processes and create great relationships with vendors so that you can be very profitable on the materials you're specifying for your clients. I could go on and on and on, but I just wanted to share a little bit about that, because with timelines, there are so many other things that are little but have a huge, huge impact in your business. For example, defining your services. There are so many designers out there that offer a wide range of services, e-services, full design services, consultations. Like, there's this whole menu of services that they offer. And I have experienced trying those things as well. And I have found that the second you decide what it is you're good at, what you want to do, and you become very, very clear on that, and you learn how to communicate that, you're no longer getting calls from clients saying, I'd love it if you took me shopping and come over and look at these paint colors and da 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 da. You're now the one leading the design project, and they're fitting within it because we know what they need, and sometimes they are way too involved. And so by getting really clear on your services, you're going to then be able to steer that ship. So we talk a lot about that. It's also really important that your proposals are very clear. They're going to set the stage, and they need to be very simple. And this is a mistake I see a lot of designers make. They send over, potential client and investment guide and all about the firm and this long proposal trying to justify the expenses. And that just puts too much on your client to even make a decision and move forward. So I really like to talk about being very efficient in your proposals, make it very easy for your client to open it up, decide you're who they want to work with, and sign it, move on. And we talk a lot about contracts that protect your time and prevent endless revisions and really unnecessary work. So also tackling scope creep. This is something we really, really struggle with, but when you have a clear definition of what you do, how you do it, you communicate those things, you provide a timeline that specifies all the dates you're going to meet and what you're going to go over in those meetings and how much time they have to give you input, it becomes really, really easy for you to say, hey, client, you've just emailed me about helping you pick out pool tile. I love that. That sounds so much fun. Let me send your proposal for that. Right? You've been very clear and all along the way about what you're doing for them and for how much time it's going to take, when you're going to meet, that when they start throwing in these extra things, it can roll off your tongue that you're going to send them a new proposal for that. So, and then we have all finished a project, delivered it to a client, and then had emails continue, texts continue, calls continue coming. And so the last webinar we did with Design Files was on our spec book, like our deliverables that communicate we have completed everything. I would highly recommend that you watch that webinar if you are having a hard time stopping the design process. And it's just like further continues on this topic of providing a timeline. So that is kind of my quick explanation of how we use timelines in Design Files. And here's this QR code if you want to screenshot this screen and schedule a call with us. I love Zooming with all of you ladies. I've Zoomed with a lot of you so far, talking about your businesses and what you're struggling with. And if I think maybe the business that it is a good fit for you at the point in your business that you're at, if you're really wanting to grow and you're, just sick of the things you're struggling with, I love that I've been able to help other design firms just grow much quicker, skip the learning curve, and think a lot bigger. So I'm really excited to move into the Q&A, but if you want to go to this link or scan this QR code, we'll send you our free project timeline guide. So I showed you the timeline, but a lot of people have asked, well, at what point do I do what things? So this is kind of a supplementary guide on extra things to think about while you're creating that timeline, and how much time should be in between your initial presentation and your full presentation. And so it's a little guide like that to kind of help further your understanding on how to implement a timeline. So welcome back.
Awesome. Thank you so much for showing all of those kind of like detailed examples. We always love examples and screenshots. I'll leave this up here for a little bit longer before removing it, just so people can grab it.
Okay.
So let's hop into some comments. So the first question is, how do you ask for feedback? Through DF comments?
Yes. So that's like the perfect question to start this off, because a huge part of the timeline process, you'll see it says 7 days for feedback. And so when I'm in that initial presentation with my client and I'm showing them my mood boards in Design Files, I at the end say, I'm going to send you this presentation. As soon as we wrap up, I might make a couple little edits based on the feedback you gave me, but I'm going to send this to you digitally. And then I open the client preview. I push on client preview and I show them, I say, this is what it's going to look on your end. You're going to see this board. It's going to have all of the materials, finishes. And then as you scroll down, you'll see the full product list. And I let them know what I need you to do is I want you to go through every item and approve, decline it, or comment on it. And once you have done that, let me know you're 100% done. But I can't move on to the next phase until you have approved, declined, or commented on every single item.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they go in and they just approve, decline, and then say, I don't love orange, or can we do something bigger here? Or, whatever their comment is, I at least now know I can move on to the next phase with complete understanding of every single thing I have presented to them. That makes things go so much faster.
Yeah, got it. Just adding that back, as somebody asked for me to add that back. So I'm just adding that back for a minute. Yeah, so that way you're doing it for every single item, because you just don't want to run into issues down the line where they say, oops, I don't like that.
Yeah, exactly. That makes everyone, sit down with their partner, if there is one, and say, do you like this? I do too. Approve, or, hey, David doesn't like things that have texture on them. It just it makes them be very cognizant of giving you good feedback.
Yeah, that makes sense. The next question is, how many are on your team? And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you structure your team too.
Yeah, so for us to do, this kind of revenue and do that many big projects a year, I am the lead designer, and then I have a junior designer under me. Who I typically get the project started, do all the boards. She then starts helping me do CAD concepts in SketchUp. And then I have a technical designer who does all of our deliverables and detailed CAD work. Then I have an operations manager. She runs the back end. So she's putting proposals together. She's invoicing. She's doing QuickBooks stuff. She's running payroll, things like that.
Yeah.
And then I have someone that places all of our furniture orders, helps me do the marketing. She's also a photographer. She's amazing. So kind of like I have stacked my team with people that do things that I don't want to do. And I love selling. I love talking to clients. I love presenting. I love high level stuff. So anything I am not good at or I don't want to do, I brought someone on my team to do that.
Yeah. Awesome. And then, so are most of them full-time employees then?
Yeah. Most started out as very part-time employees. And then as they showed that they were valuable, became full-time pretty quickly. And I was so nervous about hiring. So hiring someone very part-time and me getting comfortable with it. And then us growing and growing because they allowed us to grow. I then got a lot more comfortable with hiring people full-time right out the gate.
Yeah. Nice. So let's see. And then Dana's saying, I was part of the last business edit program in January and can 1000% recommend it. So maybe for Dana. Yeah. Let's see. Do you offer coaching on how to improve the processes and services you already have in place to match what you actually want to do?
Well, the business edit program, what it is I took my entire business and how I run it, and I didn't even have to develop it. All I did was put in, make it very easy for other people to understand. This is what I do. Here's the script for this call. This is how my proposal looks. Here's all these examples. Here's my contract. Here's this. Here's this. So I just put it all into a Google Doc. I teach you how I do all of it. And that's as much coaching as you need. Like it's a one and done, 3 days at market. And I make sure it's really easy to understand and implement yourself. So I don't necessarily offer coaching, but that program is a business in and of itself.
Awesome. So what do you put in your proposal? And what do you put in your proposal about the number of revisions and how many revisions per item?
So I just say they get 2 rounds of revision. And that technically, and let me go into this a little bit deeper. So when I'm on that sales call, I talk about my process. And what it is I'm going to do an initial presentation with you. I am going to show you all the mood boards and maybe a couple of renderings and make sure you love the direction I'm going. Once I get all your feedback, I'll then move into the full presentation phase. And at that point, you get 2 full rounds of revision. So you'll see every rendering, every material. And once I get your full feedback on that first presentation, I'll move into your second round of revisions. I'll present again to you again. When you're done with all of your feedback, we'll then move into the spec book phase. That's where all of the design has been fully approved. And what's really, really cool is that, and might blow your minds, is that I let every client know we're not going to talk about numbers and costs until everything is fully designed. And you're going to start panicking inside saying, how is that even humanly possible? But we talk about budget up front, what they're trying to do this project for. We all know that's never going to happen. Everyone wants more than what they can afford. But I'm going to take that, I'm going to keep that in mind. I am going to design within reason, 100% within reason, knowing what clients in their specific situation typically buy, right? I'm just going to use common sense. And so we design it all out within reason, with what they're wanting. And then we develop all the drawings, and their contractor bids out all of the construction, and we bid out all of the furniture. And at that point, anything out of budget, we let them know we can swap anything. Don't worry, we're going to design it exactly how you want within reason when it comes to budget. And then at that point, we come back together again and we discuss any revisions that might need to be made for the budget. And I'm telling you now, there are almost no revisions. Like, if anything, they decide to put something on in a phase 2, or it's, hey, this kitchen faucet is a little too expensive, let's swap that, or this fixture, let's swap this fixture. So there are very, very, very few revisions at that point, but it is another opportunity for your clients to make revisions. So while we say 2, it's technically, after that initial presentation, that's 1. After the first full, that's 2. After the second presentation, that's 3. And then when it comes down to budget and cost, that's another round technically. So in our proposal at the bottom, it says 2 rounds of revision included. But if someone gets nervous about that, I talk them through the full process, and that puts them at ease.
Nice. And they know they have kind of multiple points to.
Yeah.
And each point kind of has a different purpose, which probably makes it easier for them to go, okay, what am I reviewing for, right?
Yeah, and because they have been so comprehensive in their feedback at each round, most times we don't need that second round. I would say 90% of the time, we don't need that second round.
So. Cool. Okay, so how do you prevent clients from reverse Google searching furniture that you plan on purchasing for them?
So I think our initial consult call, we ask some prying questions that tell us whether we think we're working with a client who's going to be doing that. And one of those questions, I'll just tell you right now, is would you describe yourself as a bargain hunter, or are you more interested in quality and will wait for the right piece? You know, and just little questions like that, people will be like, oh my gosh, I love a bargain. You kind of know, all right, this is going to be someone who's going to reverse Google search every single thing that I present to them. and try to find a better price. But really, I just make sure how I'm pricing things is competitive with other people. And if I know it's something easily searchable and they're that type of personality, I just make it maybe $100 less expensive, maybe $50. They see that and then they're more confident in just working with you, having you do all the work because you're a luxury service and they've paid a lot of money for you. So I don't know why they would waste their time doing that, but it is a very common question I get. I also think in my presentations, there's a way you should be overwhelming your clients in a good way. They should be very overwhelmed. There should be 100 samples in front of them, see how beautiful it all is and is working together. They have full confidence that you're the one that's going to make it happen. They can't even begin to start doing what you've done so far, right? So if you are overwhelming them in a good way, they trust you. They're letting you do your thing. And why would they start meddling when you've got it all? Look how much work you just did, right?
Yeah. I like the idea of overwhelming them in a good way. That's a good one. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the questions that are in. Oh, wait. No. Oh, wait. Oh, here we go. It wasn't. We have more questions. The button wasn't working. Yay, we do have more questions. Okay. So, okay, well, one person's asking what the cost of the business edit program is. I'm guessing you don't have to share that if you don't want to, but.
No, sure. So I run a deal, a huge, awesome deal for people who watch our webinar and who schedule their Zoom call today. So it's 12.5, but if you schedule today and we do your Zoom call and you sign up, I do it for 8.5. So it's at the end of the summer. I look at it as you're going to learn far more about the design business than you ever did in your 4-year degree or any job you've ever had. Like, this is 17 years of experience wrapped up into a really beautiful package that you are going to take, and you're going to make that back in one small room of furniture. So that's kind of how I have decided to price the program, is I want to make sure you're making it back right away when you implement these little tactics we do.
Yeah, love that. And you have, like, people probably can also learn how to, like, manage a team better. Is that part of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is my business in a package. And when you hire someone on, you can say, go to the install folder, open it, every resource, like, that's their training guide. So it trains your whole team even after you take the course, that you have everything you need to train your team.
Nice. So our next question is, how much do you charge for service versus markup?
So our proposals are very simple. And it just says, interior design services, one line, depending on what's involved. And it's a flat fee. I don't charge hourly, and I would never recommend it, because as soon as you are efficient, you should be paid not for your time, but for your talent. And the more efficient you get, that if you charged hourly, that would just hinder you. So it's a flat fee because I know exactly how much time it's going to take my team, and I want to make sure I'm making a ton of money on it. And I want the client to know what it's going to cost. So flat fee for the design services. And then in our contract, it talks about our purchasing services and that we charge our clients retail. And in the business edit program, I teach you guys all about how to talk about that with your client from the very first phone call throughout the whole project, so that they're not sending you links to CB2 because they were surfing the web for furniture. They should not be doing that. You're the designer, you know the best products. And so they pay retail, and I teach you how to talk about that and why and how to sell them on it and why they should be so excited about that.
A lot of designers use, like, the hybrid method where they do charge hourly when it comes to, like, project management. So are you saying you don't do hourly at all?
No, and I don't do project management at all.
Right, because that's the spec book part, right?
It's the spec book part. So your clients are hiring really crappy contractors, and they are looking to you to keep the project moving along, and you have inserted yourself to be their babysitter. And we're not babysitters, and it should not be my fault you hired a really bad contractor. So I make sure what we deliver is so good that if their contractor it has questions, I can say, see page 12. It has everything you need there. Go do your job and do it well. It's not my job to babysit you. So I have found that as soon as you learn how to do wholesale furniture, which is a big part of our business edit program, you could never make remotely enough money project managing to decide to project manage and charge hourly for that versus just delivering a badass spec book and spending your focus on wholesale furniture, selling furniture, and getting rid of managing projects. So I do talk a lot about how do you sell that to a client, right? When you say, I don't manage your project. A lot of clients want their project managed. They don't understand that you're doing them a huge favor by delivering an amazing spec book that is the babysitter. Their contractor does not need to call them, but they can call us anytime. I say I will be there for them if they have a question ever. I will be on site if they ever call me. I just know my spec book is so good, they will never call me and I don't need to be on site. So it's all about how you communicate.
How you say it to the client. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So next question, I'm assuming you show floor plans in your initial presentation, or do you save that when you get feedback on, let's say I'm thinking a sectional instead of 2 sofas and you show the floor plan at full presentation?
I do a floor plan in the initial presentation because I really want to communicate. I've thought everything through and this is what I'm thinking right now, initially, high level. This is what I'm thinking. And they usually look at it and say, yeah, that looks great. Like, keep going, do your thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then can you go through your revisions again? Somebody wanted to hear that again, because it was 2 revisions on initial. What was the whole process there?
Yeah. So I present the initial concepts, send it to them, and then they need to approve and decline every single item in the product list and leave comments. And then as soon as that's all done, I can see, right? We get emails when they've made comments. I just say, hey, let me know when you're 100% done and I'll move on to the next phase. And then that full presentation, I'm presenting everything. And they then approve, decline everything there. And that finishes their first round of revision. So then I can say, thanks for all your feedback. Let me know when you're 100% done. This will conclude your first round of revision. Super excited to keep working together, and that communicates once again, be thorough in your communication and your feedback, because we're then going to be moving on to the next, round and phase, and you only get so many, right? And they can see it visually that they only get so many.
Okay. Got you. So what are some of your set timelines to get through the different design phases? For example, after the initial consultation appointment where you present 20% of the project, how much time do you give you and your team to present the full presentation to the client?
Okay, that's the best question, because that very last page of the slideshow where I said screenshot this and you'll get the free project timeline guide right here.
Okay. This one?
So I kept getting the question, I think is it Allison that asked that? I kept getting that question, so I kind of wrote this out. And a lot of designers, when I show this to them, they're like, there's no way. How do you do that in that short of time? But I'll walk you through it. So typically, I'm trying to make this big enough so I can see it myself. So
I can remove, let's see, I remove dust so that you can kind of see it better. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, so I kind of work on 2-week intervals. So I know if I've delivered the initial presentation to them, they have 7 weeks to give me feedback, or 7 days to give me feedback. I know it's about 2 weeks later that I will do that next presentation. So I give me and my team about 2 weeks on average to make revisions to each project. And a lot of designers have said that feels very, very fast. But once you implement a lot of the things that I teach in the business edit program, you'll understand completely how we can do it that fast. So, but they've given you such thorough feedback, you're not really guessing. You've got all the feedback you need to just jump right in there and start making edits. But if your team is smaller and you know you need 4 weeks, I mean, just take that into consideration and put 4 weeks. But I love to run on about 2-week timelines to make revisions. So that's about 3 weeks between each meeting. So we can have a small project and we can have a giant project, and we're almost always finishing those design phases within 4 months. And it kind of just depends on how slow or fast the client wants to give you feedback. But we're kicking these projects out super fast. In fact, I was going to just share that we have implemented, I'm trying to get back to the screen.
Here we are.
We started noticing that with this process, we were seeing our clients less and less. And so I started implementing Loom videos. If you haven't heard of them, it's where you record your face and the screen. So anything I did on their project, I was walking them through what I did, and I was sending it to them because I just wanted them to see my face more and create more goodwill. And so you'll just notice as you implement this how efficient you get and how fewer meetings you're having. So it's fun.
Love that. Loom is such a great tool. I don't know that a lot of interior designers are using Loom with clients. Do you think? I don't think it's as common in interior design.
Okay, wait. So sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just okay. What was that?
Oh, I was saying I'm not sure a lot of interior designers are using Loom with clients.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? I don't think it's as common.
No, I don't even know where I heard of it.
Yeah, it's really common in marketing.
I think it was someone in marketing was on a Luann Nagara podcast, and I tried it, and it is the best way to deliver bad news, I think, is what the podcast was on, because it's like they can see your face and that you're like,
you care.
You care. And so if I had to say to a client like, hey, your sectional is back ordered 10 more weeks, they'd be like, excuse me, in an email, but being able to see your face, it just is awesome.
Yeah, great idea. Okay, so do you decline clients if they show they're true bargain hunters and who might just be asking for better deals?
Yeah, if I don't actually decline clients that often. I just send a proposal that would offset the money that I don't think I'm going to make because they're bargain hunting. And that usually they decline me, right? It's too expensive. So.
Gotcha. Revisions start when they have made their choice, right? But what happens when you've already presented more than the 2 announced mood boards and the client still can't make up their mind?
I would say at that point, once you've gotten through the 2 rounds of revision, it's not uncommon that there's like one light fixture we just can't nail down. And if that does happen, I put that back in the client's hand to say, hey, why don't you do a little bit of time, finding some inspiration of items that you do like or rooms you do like to help me help you. So at that point, if they still are not, they're still on the fence, they just haven't been able to communicate what they're looking for. So just, I do that once in a while if that's happening, but typically by that point, I've overwhelmed them so much and shown them it's going to be gorgeous that those types of things happen less and less.
Nice. And then can you restate that podcast episode where you learned about the loom? Whose podcast was that?
Luann Nagara. She has a podcast called A Well-Designed Business. And if you are ever thinking about a specific topic on the design business, she probably has a podcast on it. She's amazing. And I heard one on Loom videos, and I started doing it right away, and I've been doing it for years, and it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, nice. So the contractor does all of the purchasing of everything that's in your spec book, not you. How does that work with purchasing materials?
So if there's a material that I can make money on, in the spec book, in the finish schedule, under the column where all the products are linked that I want him to buy, it'll just say see Urban Revival quote. And then you can provide those, like a contractor will get that quote approved, or the client will approve it, and we'll purchase those items. But there, as you get better at selling wholesale furniture, you're going to realize, okay, I know I get 10% on tile or whatever, but it is not worth my time. So you kind of, as you get better at things as the business owner, you get to decide what you want to buy and what you don't want to buy. And anything you're not making a really good markup on, let the contractor mess with it. Don't mess with it. Anything you do want to buy, just in the link column, right, you're going to provide the quote in there for it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. Let's see. You mentioned the contractor does the construction side naturally. Do you mean that you do not order tile and make markup on that? Okay, I guess that was kind of the same question.
Yeah.
You order specific, you kind of learn as you go what's worth ordering, basically.
Yeah, and also too, if you're super swamped with furniture orders, you're not going to want to touch tile, right? Because they need 3 more pencils, and like that's annoying. You're not making enough money to bother with that. But if you're in a slow phase, it's like, look, I'm going to order the tile, I'm going to order this, like, and you just make that very clear in your finish schedule.
Yeah. Do you ever run into problems with the contractors? Like if it's contractors that you work with and they're like, how come sometimes you're ordering it and sometimes not, or they don't?
No, I don't have any problems with it, because what you're going to do is when you finish designing it, and that last meeting is the pre-construction meeting, you're going to take your spec book and you're going to meet with the client and the contractor on site, and you're going to walk through your whole spec book. And then you're going to say, and here's our finish schedule. Here's the links to everything you're going to order. But you'll notice there's a few things that say, quoted by Urban Revival. So we have provided those quotes to our client, or will provide those quotes to our client. That would then mean that contractor who's wanting this job from your client would have to say in that meeting, I don't like that, I want to buy that, blah, 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 blah. And typically, I'm not buying all that much. I'm buying the things I can really make a lot of money on, and they can't, and they don't want to handle it anyways. So when you have that conversation in that way, it's fine. And when we work with contractors, they beg their other clients to hire us because our spec book was so good. It made their life so much easier. And because we were very efficient, they're able to be very efficient, and they're not getting change orders from their clients constantly. It's been approved. It's done. They can bid it out and they can build it.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. So on that note, what are the typical items that you do buy outside of furniture? Do you have like a top 5 kind of favorite that's worth it?
Yeah. So we work with a cabinet company that we love and gives us a big enough discount that we work with them. There's been times that I didn't have someone like that and I wouldn't buy the cabinetry. But at this point, they're doing it far less than any contractor's guy can do it. So we do that on most projects. But I think the question you're probably asking is more like, we buy almost all of the mirrors, almost all of the lighting, the wallpaper. What else? I have a great flooring contact, so sometimes I get into the flooring aspect, but sometimes I don't. But most often it's lighting and mirrors, wallpaper, and I strongly advise you to stay away from hardware, even if you make a buck on each one. Like, stay away from it.
Okay. Does the hardware just get too complicated with things like maybe being out of stock
and needing one more or one broke, like the claims aspect and the reordering, unless you have a giant team to do it, like you don't have enough time, let the contractor do it.
Right. Got you. Okay. So that actually takes us to the end of our questions, unless anybody wants to pop anything up. And so we're doing great on time. I'll just pop this. Oops, I meant to add it here. I'll just pop that on there one more time for anybody that's kind of joined later. If you want to grab the free project timeline guide. Emily, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
I would just say back. I forgot to mention this at the time, but I think now is a good point to mention it because we have a lot of contractor and tile questions going on right now. I used to almost only do renovations and then some new builds. And so you're pretty much just making money on the service fees. And the entire reason I developed the Business Edit program was because I learned really quickly when I started dabbling in wholesale furniture that service fees keep the lights on, and selling furniture allows you to travel to Europe and take your kids to do cool things. And so I developed the Business Edit program to help other designers figure out how to freaking make money, because we work so hard and we bend over backwards and we just want to deliver the best, absolute best for our clients. And so by making more money allows us to do that for them, right? We're not drowning and can barely get back to them. Like, we can then hire more people. So I show you that revenue page so you can see, like, back when I was almost solely doing service fees, that made up 80% of my revenue were service fees, and the other 20% was income off of furniture sales. But now 80% of my revenue is furniture sales and 20% is service fees. So you can see why I'm like, you could not pay me enough money to manage that contractor, because there's not enough money in it. All the money is in your furniture sales.
I love that. It's cool too, because we had somebody last month talking about their e-design process, and it just shows you, it's like you can get freedom and, get higher revenue. Like, there's so many different ways to do it, but I think from what we've heard, the wholesale furniture is one of the best, right?
And I do teach so many designers who have come through the program do offer e-design. And I've helped them restructure that in their mind. There's no reason to offer e-design. E-design implies a cheap service in my mind, and you are still doing just as much work. You're getting kind of wrapped up into doing the same thing you typically do. And I can do my full home service, design, furnishing, everything for anyone in the world. My process is the exact same. And so why devalue yourself and offer an e-service when it's just full service design? And I don't care where you are. I don't care where you are in the world, because technology has allowed us to still do exactly what we do anywhere. So that's a very fun aspect of the Business Edit program, is to see how that even works.
Yeah, love that. Do you mind? We have a couple more minutes. If we could just take 2 questions on wholesale. So what's the difference between wholesale furniture and furniture with a trade discount?
Okay, so a trade discount is what you get from like big box retail stores like Restoration Hardware, Crate and Barrel, CB2, those types of vendors. And the reason I take people to the furniture market is I know it's pretty intimidating and it seems very complicated and overwhelming. And I teach you how to do it. And you will see very quickly why you never want to buy from those big box retailers ever again. Because you can deliver the same products or similar products for the same cost or less money, and then you control the customer service aspect of it, and you make money. That's the only way you're making money in this business, is by doing wholesale furniture. And so I want to teach you how to do it. And that's why, even when you say, hey, I can't afford the $8,500, jump on a Zoom, $8,500, jump on a Zoom call with me, because I will show you how you can do it extremely easy in one tiny little room. And you're going to learn 20 other amazing things about your business that will help you make more money besides the furniture aspect of it. So wholesale is you're buying from the same people that Crate and Barrel is buying from. You're just cutting them out of it. So I'm showing all the designers how much money you're leaving on the table. Your clients are still spending that money. You're just letting someone else make it instead of you.
Right. Do you give warranties for the furniture that you buy?
Yeah, so warranties talked a lot about in our contract. So that's part of the Business Edit program, is seeing that contract, getting a contract I've spent a ton of money on. But I just tell my clients, look, I'm going to buy from probably 70 vendors for your project. So, and they all offer standard, pretty standard furniture warranties. But if something happens, I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And I know I can take care of you because I'm charging you retail. If I gave you discounts, I wouldn't be able to take care of you. No one would be happy in this situation, but I want to make sure that I can take care of you. So you're going to pay retail.
Right. Okay. So our last question is going to take us back to the, working with clients in a different location. So how do you manage measurements and pictures from afar? Like if you're able to keep this kind of full service, high-end approach, how are you doing that?
So whether the client is my next door neighbor or they live in the Caribbean, I use a service to do our as-built scans. We also do Matterport. This sounds like a lot, sounds intense. It's very, very easy. It's a scan. There's companies that do it. They go in, they scan it all. They select that I want it kicked back to me in a CAD or a SketchUp file, and I get that sent back to me. So I don't ever measure ever. I do the scan every time. It's very affordable, and clients are always willing to pay for it. And it's very accurate. So I get that sent back to me and I'm working in it. And if you don't know what a Matterport is, look it up. It's basically a virtual walkthrough of the house. And we do it for our design projects. So when my client is sitting right here and I'm presenting to them and they say, but remember that room that has that weird little niche? I just open up the Matterport. I go to that room. I can look up at the ceiling and show them that little niche and how we've worked around it. So the technology that you don't know about is making it harder to be efficient. It's like using, if you're using the wrong tool in construction, their job is going to take so much longer. I love teaching you guys all the tips and tools and software programs to make it easy. And this isn't all on you, right? You're hiring it out. They're kicking it back to you. So you're just moving in your design business.
Yeah. Awesome. That is really helpful and obviously shows how, like location doesn't matter, especially with growing an online audience. That way you don't have to like discount for a different lead, So thank you so much for joining us today. And this was really, really helpful. And we got a lot of, great feedback. And obviously we had a ton of questions this time. So that's always a good sign that we've hit a nerve.
Yeah, totally. I love it. It's so great.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us. And we'll see everybody next month for another workshop.
Yeah. Thank you so much.